I personally am sympathetic towards the strikes, in particular regard to nurses. I think if you look at, 42% of nurses are in a particular band where they're earning between, I think, £27,000 to like £31,000 a year, and that's like a significant portion. And if you actually look at what is happening with inflation, the traditional way we actually look at these sorts of salaries, I don't think are really applicable because of how fast costs are rising. And whilst I can appreciate that asking for 19%, 5% above inflation, I personally would say that is unreasonable. I don't think that's going to happen. For the government to then respond with, we're just going to follow the independent pay review body offering 4%, that, to me, doesn't actually appear as though the government is even trying to meet them halfway. And at the moment, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with the strikes or not, the government strategy isn't working because the country is effectively coming to a standstill. I personally don't think they're doing enough, really.
Kevin Rooney, where are you?
Yeah, funny enough, I largely agree with Dominique, but I support the nurses 100%. But I want to say it loud.
What does that mean?
Well, hold on, but I want to say it loud because people sometimes single off the nurses and they go, they're all right, we support them, but they're not so keen on maybe the real workers, the RMT. So I support the paramedics, the RMT, the border staff and the nurses. And the bottom line is what I think is becoming really interesting is in politics you have a choice. Right? I don't buy that nonsense of Tina, Thatcher's I'll dictum, there's no alternative. So what is interesting to me is whether or not Rishi Sunak is really gearing up to try to break the unions. He has a choice. I mean, this government spent hundreds of millions of pounds on the war in Ukraine. They spent billions of pounds on COVID. Previous governments have spent billions of pounds bailing out the banks. And you're telling me that they cannot afford to pay what these workers are asking for in the context of a cost of living crisis? I mean, what they're offering the workers is so measly. And what the NHS staff and others are asking for is absolutely not revolutionary in any sense. So, of course, they should pay them. It's a political
pay them
choice.
What? So 19% is what they've asked for?
Well, two things. I think they should pay them 19% myself. When you think about the cost of living crisis, what that 19% would do is bring them back in real terms to what nurses got in 2010. That's the first thing. But the second thing is, we all know in the real world, when you ask for a certain pay increase, the way it generally works is the government or whoever will come in and say, we'll give you such and such. And then the other side come and say, well, actually, no, but we'll settle for such and such. And then the other side say, blah, 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 blah. And I think that would be a far better way of going about things, negotiating. And now today as well, I'm hearing these wee sounds about them criminalising certain strike action, criminalising people who want to withdraw their labour. Come on, get real, negotiate, strike a deal, end of story. You have a choice.
The thing is, I would maybe look at this differently if we weren't splashing loads of money on loads of other pointless stuff. If we weren't throwing money at Ukraine, if we didn't, print money during the pandemic as if it was, going out of fashion. If we didn't do all of that, I might be like, oh yeah, we might need to tighten our belt. But it's very selectively applied, this whole thing. And as someone who, adheres to conservative values, the bedrock of our society are its public services and the people that carry out those services. And if so many of those people are saying, we cannot survive, we are having to go to food banks, it's really, really difficult for us, at some point you're going to have to say maybe these people know what they're talking about. And that's what's difficult for me.